This is a continuation of the Codeology series. This is on Article 250 and its subsections. The intent of this series is for you to go along in your code book and look at some of the articles and sections as we present this material. Article 250 is a large section, and it's a very heavily used section. It's got 10 parts. I want to look at it kind of like if we're going to digest an elephant, we need to look at individual parts. So we're going to break it down into each individual part so that we can start looking at it in a little more organized fashion. So here's the 10 parts that exist in Article 250, and we're going to go through each one of those fairly quickly here in this video, and then look for additional videos that go into specifics on some of the more popular articles in Chapter 250. Part 1, General Part. This is an important part of the code, and there's 8 articles in this part. They're worth your time to read through each of those 8 articles. It's not very long, it's only a couple of pages. They describe the scope, and they talk about definitions. They talk about grounded systems versus ungrounded systems. And there's just a lot of good information in these 8 articles that are general to all of the grounding and bonding in Section 250. Part 2 starts to talk about system grounding. And as you look on in Part 2 at the different articles that are in Part 2, you'll see that they address different systems. One of the common mistakes that happens is that we get into we look in the index and we find something about sizing a conductor or whatever, and sometimes we're in the wrong subsection, or we jump to a table without going through the steps of the subsection of the system that it's in. For instance, if you're dealing with a service-supplied AC system, you should know that you're starting in 250.24 and then reading through there, as opposed to if you're going to be working with a separately derived system that starts at some other point. It's another system that's addressed and has a whole article that deals with that, or a generator systems, for instance. There might be, and as I said before, the article on the type of system may have different requirements for different grounding elements. Part 3 is dealing with the grounding electrode system and the grounding electrode conductor. Now, all the systems have these elements, and so, or the systems that do have these elements, all will refer to articles in Part 3. It's pretty long, but it talks a lot about the types, the installation, sizing, and lots of other details about the grounding electrode conductor and the grounding electrode conductor system. Part 4 is fairly short. It talks about enclosure, raceway, and service cable connections. These are important because there are things that a lot of people get caught on whether or not how they're grounding and bonding raceways as they tie to the grounding and bonding system. And Part 5 on bonding, this covers all parts. You can see in this graphic in Figure 250.1 that the Part 5 in bonding relates to all of the different parts of the system. As we continue in Part 5, I think a good description is in 250.90, and it describes in that definition that bonding shall be provided where necessary to ensure electrical continuity and the capacity to conduct safely any fault current likely to be imposed. This is why bonding is so important and why it applies to so many of the different other parts of this code section. Then Part 6, equipment grounding and equipment grounding conductors. Here's where we start talking about the load side of the breaker. So maybe the other systems we're talking about grounding and bonding on the line side, and that's the system grounding. Equipment grounding is a major part of what we're going to do, because that's everything that's kind of on the load side of the breaker. It's going to address the different types of equipments, the type of equipment grounding conductors, the sizing of equipment grounding conductors, and a lot of other specific information about the equipment grounding conductor. Then as we move to part 7, on methods of equipment grounding, there's a lot of miscellaneous information in here. Some of the one that you'll probably deal with is in 250.140, which specifically talks about grounding ranges and dryers, and so you'll probably have an opportunity at some point in time to deal with putting on a range and dryer cord and in an older system or in a newer system. And then part 8, DC systems, direct current systems. Maybe many of you won't to deal with this, but as solar power and battery power proliferates and becomes more popular, you will probably have a need to visit this section, so it's good to know that it exists. We're probably not going to spend a lot of time in a lot of our worksheets in this apprentice program about it, but if you are a solar or battery systems installer, that you'll want to pay specific attention to this part of the code. Then part 9, instruments, meters, and relays. I want you to know that this exists, but we're not going to cover much of this in this course. And then part 10, systems over 1 kilovolt. Again, know that it exists, know how to go and find things that tie to those high voltage systems, but we probably won't cover much in this course. Just to recap, we will continue to expand this series, but we want you to find opportunities to test your ability to navigate through the code book. Just as anything else, the confidence for your tests comes from practice. We have many worksheets on the book, but we want you to learn how to utilize the index and tabs, as well as utilizing the table of contents and the understanding kind of the specific articles. A common mistake is for people to not read the entire reference and the exceptions and the supplemental information, also to maybe jump to a conclusion because there's a table that they think applies to something, but they don't understand how it relates in with other parts of the code. So make sure you're reading about the correct system, about the right under the right topic heading, and you should be okay, and you'll find that will really aid your pursuit of understanding the code.